Welcome back to Kettlebells and Cocktails. I'm your host, John, back with my very frustrated bestie, Nikki. Nikki, how are you?
Other than wanting to strangle my router and my extender and my entire Wi-Fi provider, doing great.
When you live on a farm with chickens, you got to expect some shoddy Wi Fi occasionally.
Oh
It's
my
just my opinion.
god. You say that, but really I'm like basically in Providence, and also really we pay for like the world's fastest Wi-Fi, and yet I don't know, I like maybe it's a sign that I shouldn't have this home office and I should just
You-
be working from the
All right.
couch.
You say Providence like it's New York City. I've been to Providence. You have an airport that has four gates. That's it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Providence. The rest of it is a city. Everyone,
Mm-hmm.
if and when flying into the East Coast, every single person should fly into Providence. It is
Oh
the
my God.
best airport. It is tiny. It gives you zero problems. It's like the Madison airport.
Let's talk about the Providence airport for a second. Before we do that, we're going to introduce our guest. Anikha Greer is with us. Anikha, how are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me on.
Have you ever been to Providence, Rhode Island, ever?
I have not, but I am from my own tiny little island that also
Yeah,
sits
you get it.
I do, and I think I could probably take you like 10 to 2,000 steps lower than that. 4 gates is 4 more than what we have. We have
Uh,
a room
I
Okay,
so I
first of
occasionally
all,
I
a plane.
they've
first
got
of
more than
all,
4. They got more than
yeah, they
4. I
there's
mean,
okay.
We
Yeah,
literally I am not exaggerating when I say we have a room. Like, there
right.
is a single plane that
Right.
comes with
That's how my husband's hometown is in like northern Maine, like border of Canada.
that makes sense.
One room and there's one belt and there's
Yep.
one plane that goes back and forth between Jersey and Prescott.
Yeah,
That's
the
it.
problem is that that's, like, our whole island. The whole province is just that one airport, and you can either take a ferry to go across to New Brunswick, or you can take the plane to either Toronto or Montreal, and then those are much bigger airports, but yeah, it's very the pickings are slim.
Now, I'm pretty sure that the last time that we had you on the show, you were there. You were still living
yes.
there and you were like maybe figuring out your next steps. And I feel like so much has changed for you since the last time we've had you. Can we have just as like a general life update? Like where are you
Yeah.
living? What are you doing? How are you training? All of that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, was it post quarters of 2022? Did we talk about the whole quarterfinal nonsense, or was it even before that?
The
Please
last
do
time
this.
you were on the show for real, I think it was before that because I
Okay.
think we had chatted about all the craziness with your scores and stuff as a one-off.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the last time we had you on for just, like, life chats,
Yeah, it
you
was
were like,
before.
"Huh?"
Oh, wow, it has been a while. Wow, so
Yeah.
much has happened since then. Yeah, I mean, so I'm in Miami, Florida now. I got here
Okay.
January 1st. Literally, I said I wanted to be here like the start of when I decided I was gonna move over a year ago in May of 2022 after I just visited, and then I'd, like, connected with Noah at, like, different comps, and then had just kept in touch with the people there, and there was just something about the gym here and just the environment that I, like, couldn't really get out of my head. I was like, "Wow, I'm very happy there," and that was always
Hmm.
that's such a huge thing for me in training is I my happiness, like, affects so much, and I compete and train the best when I'm the happiest, and I remember being so happy when I visited, and so that kinda stuck with me, and for a while I played with it. I still was with my coach back home, and that was always a big thing too, right? Was that I didn't want to go to a training camp. That environment didn't work super well for me for a long-term thing, for periods, totally, but to live there, I don't think it would work great just with, like, my honestly, my anxiety and, like, how much pressure I put on myself, like, living in that every day, it would be hard for me to separate that, and that's just something I know about myself now, and I think training camps are super cool, but for full time for me, probably wasn't gonna be the best choice. So I was trying to navigate that of, am I gonna stay with Brett, my old coach? I mean, he's been with me since I was 14. I don't know anybody else. I don't know any different. He's been so amazing to me, but I know I need to go elsewhere. I can't stay on this little island,
Right.
like, training alone. Anyways, and I think it was after Rogue, and Noah was such a I had a terrible time at Rogue. And I just, like, mentally really did a bad job at Rogue, to be honest. I rode, like, a super hard roller coaster, crashed really hard, and just, like, did not perform super well. And I was just so impressed. This was the first time I'd gotten to witness. him at a competition, like just other than watching him like compete, and just how he approached things and how level he was and how optimistic and positive, like truly optimistic and positive, not just pretending. That was so impressive to me that I think that kind of solidified it. And we like had some bonding moments and it was really great. And that was one of the biggest positives from Rogue. And I remember being like, oh, this kind of solidifies it. Like, I want to figure out a way that I can go train with him and we can align our stuff just because I want to be around that energy because I was the polar opposite. I was like reactive and negative and like pessimistic and everything was a huge deal. And I would go up and then straight down. And it was just the polar opposite of how I competed. So, anyways, yeah. Then I got really hurt after Rogue and I had to take a lot of time off. My back got really injured, I think at Rogue, but it didn't really start bothering me until after. Still to this day, I have no idea what was wrong with it. I got an
Mm.
MRI. Nothing showed really other than something that's probably just genetic anyways. It didn't really explain anything. But I was out until basically 2 weeks before the open. So a long time. But it gave me more time to plan and think about things and apply for my citizenship and do all those kind of details. And in that time, I think it also allowed me to realize what was going to be best for me as an athlete. And that was going to be to find a coach that had done this before and knew the ins and outs of competing at a high level and getting to the CrossFit Games. And that was a really tough decision because Brett was like my biggest support system and like my brother. It was really hard. So made that decision, met with Max while I was driving. My boyfriend Alex is he's a content creator in the CrossFit space, very very good. Does Noah's content full time. Was just a coincidence that we met because we had both decided to move before we had met. So great coincidence. Anyways, I drove up with him while he moved his stuff, and on that drive, I like met with Max. We chatted for a while, figured out if we wanted to work with each other, made sure we were super thorough because I'm super loyal and I want to have a coach that I'm going to be with for a long time and grow with and invest in. So we took our time in making sure that that partnership was going to work, and it really really has. So joined Max and TTT, moved to Miami, started training with Noah, trained together all year, got healthy. Woo! Yeah, so just in the nick of time, like right before the open was the first time I was able to do like everything. So, yeah, and then this season unfolded, and that's kind of the spark notes. Even though it was like what, like 5 minutes of me talking, sparks notes of my updates since 2022.
How do you decide when there are so many training camps, there are so many high-level athletes, everyone is for the most part really wonderful and welcoming and open and like how do you pick like where to go and who to align yourself with? It seems like a really tough decision because there are so many wonderful options.
Yeah, I mean, and that was like one of the scariest things when I realized that that was what I was going to have to do. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I don't know anybody. But I think it made sense from the outside looking in at first because that's Noah's coach. And if I want to go train with Noah and be around that energy and have that influence, it would just make sense to also have his coach. And so that was the initial, well, let's start there because that makes the most sense from the outside looking in. And what's funny is initially, it wasn't like I met Max and I was just like instant, like with Brett, he was such a huge comfort in my life. And it wasn't like that at first. It wasn't like I met him and was just like instantly connected and comforted. And no, he made me so not, this is going to sound bad, not uncomfortable, but he challenged me. It was such
He's
a,
very logical dude.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
incredibly. But
Yeah.
it was also like, I had never been challenged like that before, like emotionally, mentally. I was also like still injured and not mentally in the best place. So it was like, it was so challenging at first that I almost not took it as a challenge, but I followed through because it was I could tell it was going to be good for me.
Yeah.
Like it was initially, it wasn't just like he didn't need me. Like he has a very successful business. He has many successful athletes. He didn't truthfully need me. He didn't need to coach me. And so that was like such a huge very different than my old coach, right? Where I was his only athlete. So that was kind
Right.
of huge for me where I realized I was like, oh, I have to earn this guy's like time and knowledge. And the more I started like listening to podcasts he had done, like reading stuff he had written, I was like, wow, he could be really good for me because he is all of the things that I am not naturally. I'm
Right.
not naturally logical and analytical. I'm more emotional and reactive. And I was like, this could be so good for me. And so I just followed that through and it has worked out. And now I like hits our relationship has grown and now he's more of a comfort and I you see the
Course.
softer side of him and stuff. But initially I was like, oh, he's gonna challenge me in ways that I really need to be challenged.
Right, right. It wasn't a lateral move. It was definitely a step up, but you had to
Yes.
work to get there. And
Yeah.
every
And
relationship takes building. I don't think people our community is so tight knit that I don't think people understand that you guys aren't all besties all the time. Like, it's
Mm.
hard from the outside looking in as a fan, it's like, everybody knows everybody, right? Don't they just, like, party in one big house every Saturday night? No, they really, like it takes a while to figure out, like, which personalities mesh where, and, like, everyone has a ton of value and education that they can offer, but, like, figuring out where you fit the best, not only easily and emotionally, but also for a growth pattern. That's really important, but I do love hearing you sort of, like, falling initially into the Noah camp because of his wonderful positivity, because I don't think everybody leads with that necessarily. I think some people are like, "Oh, this person has won X many medals," or, "Oh, this training camp has put out X many games athletes in the last year," or whatever it may be, and you were like, "I know myself. I know my mental blocks. I know my anxieties. I need to be around the right amount of positivity in order to, like, help myself progress." I love that that was your, like, step 1, where am
yeah.
I happy? Step 2, who's a great athlete around here and a great coach around here?
Yeah, honestly, that is genuinely how it went, and I think that is credit to Brett in the early stages of making sure that I never burned out as a teen, and that I
Mm,
was so diligent with, like, my life, I guess, like, making sure that I didn't just because I mean, I wanna win, like, I want to train all the time, I wanna train hard, I would bury myself, and I did for many years, bury myself in a dark corner of a gym alone, if that's what it was gonna take, but I did that for many years, and it is not sustainable. It's not really sustainable, and I think that I got drilled into my head so early that I know how important that is, and that is a big compliment to Brett, I guess, in my early years of training.
cool.
Annika, fundamentally, what do you think you did different to take that stress off of you? I mean, famously in the space, we've seen in the last year a couple of top athletes taking time off because the stress and the pressure of the role is a lot. And it sounds like you've found ways to overcome that. What have you done different?
Yeah, I mean, I also, to some of their credit, didn't have the whole CrossFit world expecting me to win the CrossFit Games this year. That's definitely a little different monster, but definitely the same genre. And I think those skills obviously transfer. It's again practice, I guess, my whole teenage years, like always being held back, always making sure my priorities were in line. Yeah, it is really tough. I guess I know myself a little bit and I have had struggles with mental health and anxiety my whole life, and I can tell when those are going to flare up, I guess, or are going to be triggered, or I can tell when I'm getting burned out. And I think I love this sport so much, and I am so hopeful and optimistic about my future, and I believe in myself enough that I know what the right decision is going to be. Like in the long term, I know how to balance that because I understand that I think honestly, and it ties into the stuff that I'm bad at in CrossFit too, require patience. And so when, because everybody hits a period where they're like, wow, like I am training a lot and I feel like I need a break. And for me to be able to actually take back and or step back and take that break as opposed to just pushing through it, I think is just credit to me having learned patience and having learned like the proper priorities at a young age. And that just carries through. But it's not easy, even though I know those things, it's never easy. It's always a challenge, but you have to it's also I mean, I'm surrounded by people, Noah, Alex, Max. I'm surrounded by super smart and knowledgeable people that have watched or have had very successful careers in this space and know that that doesn't work or that you need to take a step off the gas pedal sometimes. So A, having the patience and belief in myself to make the right decisions, and B, having people around me that kind of guide me that way and reassure me that I'm not going to suck at CrossFit if I take a couple days off
Right.
is really beneficial.
Well, I expect you to win it, so take that pressure however you want to.
Oh my
Um,
God.
I am really curious now though, because you described a lot of stuff that, in all honesty, I think a lot of us normal
Mhm.
folk, myself included, deal with often: anxiety, depression, worry, whatever. What are some of the triggers that mentioned that you've identified the triggers so you can get past it? I'm curious if we have the same triggers.
I think often it'll be like an overworked, stressed, overstimulated kind of state for a prolonged period of time. Like it will often get worse when, like, I can tell I need a break when those things are getting worse. So if I've been in a really hard training cycle for a couple weeks, like you said, 4+ weeks of like really hard training, and that's when I start to feel like down and anxious about things that I haven't been in a while, just mentally start to feel worse. That's when I notice, oh, you need a break. It's almost like I use like the fluctuations in my mental health kind of as my guidelines for for when I need to take a break. Yeah, yeah, I almost do it the opposite way where when my mental health kind of starts to fluctuate, that's when I take a step back and I'm like, all right, what is going on here that needs to take need to pump the brakes a little bit to let this settle out again.
Well, you make an interesting point because I think a lot of people do this fail to recognize what you're describing, which is when you get overworked and you said overstimulated. So imagine those of us that have 9 to 5 business jobs, we're overstimulated, overworked because we're in front of computer monitors all day long. You get your boss yelling at you and whatever. And most people go to the gym to work that off. And you've got the opposite problem. You're in the gym. That's your job. That's what you're doing. I think us normal folk go to the gym thinking, well, I'll just go work this off. And you're actually making it worse sometimes,
Yeah.
putting the stress of CrossFit and everything else on top of it. And it sounds like you're doing a great job managing that.
It's funny that you do say that though, because that is always a very good cue for me. And often it applies to when I'm feeling physically sick, but mentally, this would also have the same rule. If I am feeling rough for one reason or another, mentally or physically, I wake up and I do not feel good. If I go in and I do my first piece, which is almost always like endurance or running, something that really gets endorphins going, if I finish that first piece and I feel worse, whether it be mentally or physically, if I don't feel even a hair better, that's a really good cue for me that you don't need to keep pushing because 9 times out of 10, I wake up, I feel rough mentally, physically for one reason or another. I go in, I hit my first session, I feel better. Like whether it be I feel less weight on my shoulders or physically, I don't feel quite as sick or achy or whatever. That's when I know I'm like, all right, you can push through this, do your normal training day, you're fine. But if I feel worse, if I feel like more anxious, more down, or I start to feel like physically worse, that's my cue of like, all right, now you call it.
All right. So last question around this because it's really fascinating for me because I feel like we're walking the same journey. You're going to be our new life coach on this show, by the way.
Oh God.
Moving
I need
forward,
one too. It'll just go
kettlebells
down.
and cocktails with life coach Anikha Greer.
Perfect. I've
Uh,
been looking for a new life coach, so,
I know. I
no.
think it's
Actually, I
perfect.
have really big feelings about life coaches, so let's not
Yeah.
get into that.
Yeah.
All right. So, but here's the question because what you're describing is really cool to me. So, I had this moment a week ago where I did exactly what you're describing, which is I went in, did I don't call it a first piece because I don't do enough to have like a complete set. Like I just do like little workouts. So I went in and did my first piece and felt like crap after, and I shut it down. I'm like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm not going to do anything else today. The problem after that, though, is I had the typical CrossFitter guilt of, oh,
Mm,
I should have done the rest. Now I'm not going to be fit tomorrow. I'm going to get fat, whatever, like whatever goes through my head. How do
yeah.
you, how do you move past that?
I mean, there's a couple things you can do. One is you lean on the people you're closest to, right? Because typically they can be more other people. And it's funny that you're saying that I can be your life coach because other people are always way more logical and objective about things when it's not themselves. So I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm the life coach, okay?
Right.
So
Isn't
that's
it funny that you would never shit on your friends the way you shit on yourself?
uh-huh. That's
If
my
you ever had
favorite
a
thing.
friend Yeah, if you ever had a friend who was like, "I felt like crap today, so I didn't work out," you'd be like, "Damn right." Good.
Exactly.
Go relax. Lay down on the couch. You earned it. You'd never be like, "Oh, you're gonna get fat."
Exactly. That's when I tell my mom that all the time. I'm like, what would you say if I said that?" And that always gets her. I'm like, "What would you say if I said that about myself?" And that always turns it around. But yeah, that's a very good, very, very good thing to remember. But yeah, leaning on people that you're closest to, like whether it be Noah or like Alex for me, where I'm like, I know I should stop, but I'm feeling anxious about, because then it almost gets worse where I'm like, I'm feeling anxious. So, but I'm at a point where I shouldn't do any more training today. But now I'm anxious about not doing training. Just turns into this spiral. And I'm queen of spiraling sometimes. So but yeah, leaning on people you're closest to so they can be logical and objective for you is very helpful for me at least. And also trusting for me because I know that about myself of like, you tried. You did try. You didn't just quit before it even started. You did try and you got that very firm cue of like, you do not feel better. You feel worse. And sometimes you have to learn to trust yourself. And that's a very hard skill, but it applies to a lot of things. So
Mhm.
I try
Yep.
to, in instances like that where I have set a very clear guideline and rule for myself, I just try to trust that sometimes.
I try to lean on Nikki, but her solution for everything is go get a pumpkin spice latte, and that doesn't work for me. It's
Are
just,
you sure? Have you tried? Even
Sure.
tried?
They are very helpful.
I am
Um,
down with the comfort food. I am down with it.
yeah. Really what you need is a pumpkin cream cold brew, but it's just that now we're just talking semantics. I
Yeah.
did the thing was this last week or 2 weeks ago where I did quit before I even started, but in that moment, it was the right move. I didn't really feel like working out and I felt crummy and I was coming off the tail end of a cold and I like all day long I didn't feel like working out, but then I got in the car and I started driving to the gym and halfway to the gym I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I just like took the next turn and went and picked up my kid from daycare instead. And it was the best decision. I was like, I'm going to pick him up early and we're going to go home
Yep.
and snuggle on the couch. And it was the greatest move for that day.
Yep. And that's the difference,
100%.
I think, also between it's my job versus it's something that should be augmenting your life and should be fun.
Hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's very different. It should probably be a different rule in the sense of you guys probably should be gentler with yourselves with this because it's something that you like doing and you do it for fun. And as soon as it becomes not fun or you're forcing yourself to do it, then what's the point anymore?
I
I would
said that I s
say
I said that
something
like
very
8 years ago. 8
I
years ago.
well,
It's
I
no
would
longer
also
fun.
for what it's worth, I would say something very similar about your job too, in that,
True.
yes, sometimes you have to just like, eat the shit sandwich and wake up and go to work, and it is what it is because it's what pays your bills. But when it starts to become a real burden on your life, and I'm not gonna go so far to be like, the second it's not fun, you shouldn't do it anymore because it's work. We all know work. But when work becomes a real burden on your life, then that work is not for you anymore. And
Yep.
that's something that I think most of us take too long to get
Yes,
to. Which
for sure.
actually I have a question about for you, Annika, because you've been doing this for so long. You basically decided as a teen that this was going to be your career. This is something that you like consciously made. How old are you now?
20.
Right. So barely out of your teens, effectively. And you've decided to like really pursue this as your career. And I think that you're representative of like, the next wave of professional CrossFitters that have been doing this from the time of childhood that we haven't really seen rise to the top just like it's like happening. Like we're watching it happen in front of us, which is insane and wonderful and amazing. I mean, shit, when I started CrossFit, it was like relatively old people doing this in their garages. Those were the people at the CrossFit Games. Now we got the masters, and one of them, air quotes,
Why are you
right?
making fun of me? What the
No, 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 this is my golden year or whatever of
No,
becoming a
see, I
master. But
was right. I was right, Annika. I told Annika off the air that your combined age is still younger than me.
You're not, well, you said you're 35, Nikki.
I'm
There's no, you're
35.
not 55.
I thought you were 33.
Wait, oh
Oh,
my God. First of all, what a dagger in my heart.
what? I thought you were younger.
What?
I thought Yeah, I thought you were younger than 35.
No, remember, this is my year. This is the year I've officially become a master. I
Mm,
get to join you
I
in
consider
the
30s
back
close enough.
pain club.
Maybe that you
God.
guys have such good life coaching because combined, you're older than me now, and
You
you're so
still
mature.
don't look 53. I would have put you in your 40s. That's why I was so confused because I was like, Nikki's in her 30s. I was like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you
Doesn't
thought I was a
track.
lot younger. I was like, that doesn't make sense then.
Well, this is a true story. Yeah, I'm 53, and I'm not bragging to look young for my age. I think anyone who CrossFits consistently for a decade, like, ends up looking younger as long as you
Fair.
keep a pretty good diet and keep your life together. And every time my daughter meets someone who's my age, she's "There's no way they're your age."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's your
Yeah.
age, so she does the same thing. She's like, "Is that person's your age?" I'm like, "Yep, they're my age."
Yeah.
Just people that smoke and drink heavy and live a tough life,
Yeah.
age at a much different rate.
We have the reverse numbers going for us at 35 and 53. We have the little
Yeah,
the numbers could do a little dance.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know. Look how cute.
Anyway, this all takes me back to my original question, which
Yes.
is like what has that transition been like for you in like really over the last couple of seasons, like really dedicating your life and deciding that this is in fact going to be your career for a time period?
Yeah, it's funny because when I started, that wasn't the goal or even something that I thought was
Right.
possible. I didn't even know the CrossFit Games existed when I started. I just started because I liked it and it was fun.
Right.
So it was a long progression of I feel like I'm different in the sense of there's a lot of people my age that started with the goal of winning the CrossFit Games. And that was why they started. And they started with like a CrossFit Games athlete in their gym. Was definitely a different progression. And the whole professional CrossFit athlete thing is relatively new too. I don't even think that was when I started, except for our select few that had been at the games for many, many years. So it was definitely, and even honestly, even as I progressed as a teenager, I never thought about it as my career, like my living, because I actually didn't think I was going to be good enough for like a couple years after the teenage division. I thought I was just good as a teen, and I hadn't even made the games as a teen. So I was like, "What? Who am I to think I'm going to do this as a career and actually be good as an individual if I haven't even made the games as a teenager?" And then 2020 was the year that I came second to Emma Carey, who's a stud as a teenager, and that was my last year, and then COVID, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is the only competition or instance I had to compare myself that year to the individual division was the open, and I had not done well. Emma was like ninth in the open as an individual, and I was like 670th. Like I was not competitive. And so I had no reason, like objectively, to believe that I was going to be good as an individual that next year, like in 2021, which I mean, I ended up missing the games by like a second in 2021. As a 17-year-old, it was like I had exceeded my expectations so wildly in 2021. I think that was even the first year that I realized that I was actually going to be good at this, like for real, not just in the age groups. So I think the progression for me was so much slower than it may look like because I've been doing it for so long. But yeah, I mean, 2021 was the first time that I was like, "Oh, wow, like you are actually gonna be good at this," whatever. 2022, that whole kind of 2022 is when I got more introduced to like more actual professional CrossFit athletes and I got to see that whole world and was when I got introduced to Cooper from Lab. And that's when it started to unfold of, oh, like people want to support you, people believe in you, like you could do this full time. I was still at school at the time. I did a year a half, maybe a full year of my undergrad in English literature. So I fully was going to school. I like wasn't planning on, I had other things I was passionate about. I didn't just like graduate high school and decide to be a CrossFitter. And then it wasn't until after Rogue of this past year that I was like, oh wow, like I had signed my deal with LSKD and Blenders and like these were big companies that believed in me and wanted me to do really well and I started realizing like I can't give them and give myself my all if I'm in school full time too. It just wasn't going to work and there was nothing. I mean, I love English, I love philosophy, like being an intellectual. Both my parents have doctorates. I like being smart, and I was scared that if I didn't go to school, I was gonna be dumb, which is not true. I'm still all right, but, uh,
Okay,
I still do
good.
okay.
Good.
I
Just
can
making
still read.
sure.
I'm still literate. I got 2 languages. I'm all right. But,
Nice.
but yeah, so that was when I decided. I remember after Rogue thinking like, I really don't wanna go back and do this assignment for something that I don't even have a game plan of what I wanna do with that degree. There was no
Mhm.
occupation that I was like, "I'm working towards that." I had no reason to work hard in it other than just, like, enjoyment, and I didn't wanna be done. So,
Right.
that was when I realized that's not enough, especially now that like, I
Right.
have people that believe in me. I'm financially able to, like and I want to be able to give myself and the people that believe in me my 100%. And so that's kind of how it evolved. It was never a like I was looking at point C all the way back in point A. All of a sudden I ended up in point C and I was like, "Oh my God, like you're here and now you have the opportunity to just do this full time and chase this with everything you have." And that was very cool.
I feel like it's a really mature move to be like, "Oh, okay, I have sponsors now. I have, ways to make this my financial stability, and I can't give this effort my all if I'm dividing my time and my brain space and my capabilities effectively." That's a really mature move. I do think it's more than just, "I don't feel like doing this homework assignment." It's like where where can I, like, shine the very most in my life right now, in this season of life? Like, where does it make sense to devote myself? And it takes people friggin' decades to figure that out. That's why we all burn out at such a young age, 'cause we're like, "I gotta do this thing, I gotta do this thing, and my parents said I had to go to college, and I don't wanna be dumb, but also I need to make money, but also I hate this, but also I just wanna work out." And it's like figuring out at 20 to be like, "This is what I'm doing right now. This is what makes sense for me. This is where I'm happy. This is the people I'm doing it with, and we're gonna see how that works out." And knowing that you can go back to school whenever and you can figure out that path when that's not going away. And I don't think you're flippant about it either. You're not like, "Oh, I'll just go to school whenever." You're like, "No, no, no. I have my thing and I know what I love to do and I will do something at some point with my life when it comes to that." But like right now, it's over here. It's in Florida. It's doing this. It's pursuing this thing that I quote unquote just found out I'm actually good at, which
Right.
is crazy. But yeah, I just think it's a lovely perspective on where you're at today, and we don't do that enough. Like we don't really look at where we're at to without looking too far in the future and
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
clouding our judgment with all the what ifs and all the
It's interesting to me, you're using your barometer as Emma Carey, who we know and love. I mean, Emma's
yep.
amazing. And it occurred to me as you were saying it, like CrossFitters have this weird journey different than many, many sports where they're now starting to get you guys stack ranked a little bit, but it's
Mm.
still really amateur level for that. So it's hard to figure out we know who was good last year, but it could be entirely different next year. So you personally are not getting a lot of feedback, I guess is my point. Between season to season. You're just
Mm.
going in and training and keeping your head down and then coming out and going, all right, am I still gonna be good enough? Did people pass me or am I gonna be the very best? Like, how do you manage that?
Oh my god, no pressure.
I don't mean it I don't mean it from a pressure and anxiety. I mean, it's a sport where you can't it's not like Major League Baseball where you have scouting camps,
Right.
where you can
Right.
go see and you can look at records and historical notes on every single player, like, because you have the Anikas of the world that kinda come out of nowhere to those of us that don't follow the sport that closely. You
I
follow
mean,
me? Like,
I do. The cheesy answer that I partially believe is that I mean, it is all about how good you can make yourself. So that's what you're focusing on is how much you can improve as an athlete. It doesn't matter how fast the other people are improving as long as you're doing everything you can to make yourself better. That's the cheesy answer. That is true, but it's not the whole answer because I'm competitive and you do want to know where other people are
yeah,
at
of
and you want to
course.
know who's fit. Like good to keep that other part in the back of your head because that is why we do this at the end of the day. Like, I don't set out to beat X, Y, and Z person. I set out to be the best. I don't care who's behind me. But at the same time, it's you can also trust that if somebody's getting like exponentially better in 1 year, like jumping that great of a distance, like that's pretty unusual. And it's probably not going to be everybody that does that. So you might have a handful of people that come out and you're like, whoa, they got really good this year, or they started training more. Like, that's cool. But the vast majority of the field is you're all progressing at the same rate ish. There's some exceptions depending on what your weaknesses are. Like, I think for me, what is requiring a lot of patience is the things that hold me back are things that require time to get better at, like running, for instance. Like, unlike a gymnastic skill that you can do a 4 week progression on and all of a sudden, like, totally be way better at this one skill because it just requires practice and it's a much faster adaptation. Running is for somebody that did not play any endurance sports growing up, a slow progression of a lot of volume that takes time. So it really depends on what certain people's weaknesses are, how fast they can progress. which is, I mean, again, totally out of your control, not doesn't even really warrant your attention. But it's almost more unusual if everybody gets way better and you didn't. That's like a very I'm sure there's some like illogical anxiety that like, everybody got so much better and I suck now. But that's typically not a super logical argument. It's honestly more likely that you jumped up way more than you thought, at least
Right.
in my case. But yeah, it would be more rare if everybody else got super good and you didn't. It's again just managing that anxiety, leaning on the people that can be logical about things that you can't. Uh, but yeah, it is. I mean, the open, it's funny because it's almost that should slash would be the first peek into who's going to be fit for the year. But the open doesn't mean anything. So it really doesn't. And even quarterfinals, players, Lauren from Morning Chalk Up sent me this statistic after quarterfinals. She was like, "So just so you know, everybody who's been top 10 in the world in quarterfinals has made the games for the past since the beginning of quarterfinals. I might have been the very first person who didn't. I was 7th in the world in quarterfinals."
Oh,
So again, you can take all of
right.
that with a freaking grain of salt. You know what I mean? It depends on the test. It depends on who's there. So it's you can guess and you can scout out people as much as you want, and then at the end of the day, sometimes it still doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Well, think about it this way. You could be the sleeper because nobody has your scores from the last season. So you might be the person. Maybe everyone
exactly.
has anxiety about you.
Yeah,
Gee, I
honestly.
don't know. We don't have her power ranking from last year. So
Yeah.
maybe you're the one that's going to come in and shake the whole
It
thing up.
honestly, it always could be. That's the thing. It's yeah, 100%. Why not
Hmm.
me?
Well,
Yeah. Hell yeah.
that is where it'd be nice if we had a much longer or a bigger season for the
That'd be
athletes.
fun.
It'd be great for you guys to earn more money, and then as spectators of the sport, it'd give us better insight as to who's improving, who isn't, who's gonna be
Yeah.
competing at the games, that sort of thing. But
Yeah, I agree, and I think in the off-season competitions are getting I mean, like, Madrid's prize purse went way up. I was like,
yeah,
"Madrid." Speaking of off but there I feel like there is a good handful of off-season competitions now where that is a possibility, but I think this sport is also I mean, every sport requires an off-season, right? This sport would be tough to have a longer season because it's so physically and mentally demanding that nobody wants to like the season's already long enough between quarters and then semis and then the games like then having to you need an off season for this but I do the amount of off season competitions with the amount of prize money they have is great like the bigger
Mhm.
those get
right.
the better that's awesome but the off season is definitely necessary.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, especially given how taxing our sport is on your body, on your mind, on all the things. I was so stoked to see you on the podium in Madrid. That was just like
Yes.
so well deserved. And you look so happy. You just look so thrilled. I'm like,
Oh,
what do I do with my face,
oh
my
my
hands?
god.
I don't know how to hold this giant check. Oh my
Oh,
God.
so funny. That was like I did many normal faces on the podium. I had many normal moments, and the one photo and video I got was just like me
Awesome.
queen waving to Noah. It was like the one awkward that wasn't to the crowd. Also, I didn't queen wave the crowd, but I caught Noah's eye, and I was like, and then that was what I got. I was like, oh god, so funny though, so like true. And I think the last reel I had posted was like some like heavy metal, like super intense music, and then the next one was just like
Best.
it's pretty telling, it's fine.
But what was that like for you? It must have felt like a little bit of just redemption. Bam, finally, here I am. I
Yeah.
did the thing. I'm up here. Y'all can see me. It's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly a little bit, but Madrid was such a cool comp for so many reasons. It was a big challenge for me, and I honestly didn't really realize it was going to be until a couple weeks before when I realized this is only my second competition with Max, and he wasn't gonna be there in person. And also Alex couldn't make it because he had a wedding. He had his best friend's wedding. And I mean, Noah was going. Noah was going to be with the team. And then, but my parents weren't going. And I realized I was thinking about all the other competitions I'd done. And I had either had, so in the past, I mean, I had Brett, who, as I had said, was like such a huge comfort and support. I'd had my parents, Brett, either Alex or even Max, like in person at semis. This was the first time I mean, I shouldn't say alone. I wasn't alone. Mike from TTT was there, but I didn't know him quite as well, but he was gonna be there with Travis. I was there with Noah and I'd made really good friends with the girls. Like I had a support system, but it was like a newer support system and half of them were competing themselves.
Right.
I didn't have like a person that was my person that was like emotionally going to be there for me that I could vent to or dump things on or have them do things. Like it was the first time I was going to have to be like super independent at a comp. And that was like a little nerve wracking at first. I was shocked at like how nervous that made me because I was starting to think about like warm ups and like cool downs and who was I going to go see after an event? What if I had a bad event? Who was I going to go? It was the first time I really had to lean on myself for a lot of things, which is something that like I'm an independent person, but I also am like very, again, like emotional and I rely on my people a lot. And I was like, oh, this is going to be new. This is going to be a challenge. And I honestly like props to myself. I handled it so well.
Hell yeah.
That was honestly why I was the most proud of myself was I handled that so well. And Mike was great I adore him. We bonded. He was awesome. I like had met him obviously at TTT, but he's not my coach. He was great. We had a great time. Travis is awesome. Noah, obviously the girls. I think we were all staying in one big house, like Noah and the girls on his team, and then Jesse, obviously, and Chandler. And all of the girls had like, one moment where something went wrong and we were really upset and everybody like comforted them. We all had our like each individual moment throughout the weekend. So it was super good and so fun. There was like it was funny. I had I made a list before the comp of Madrid recipes for success of the things that I was going to remind myself and like when I was going to have to be independent and I couldn't just lean on someone
Yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah.
Anyways, and it was funny. There was only two things on that list that I like repeated to myself over and over when I was starting to get really anxious or like stressed or nervous about something. It was so funny because I used to always think that I had to get myself like hyped up and fired up for competitions. Let's go. And I realized this competition, like I really don't. I have that so naturally. I almost need to do the opposite. I need to chill myself out because the simpler and calmer I can keep my head, the better decisions and like the better I execute. So the
Yeah.
two things I told myself all weekend was it's just exercise. It's
Yeah.
really just exercise and you exercise all the time. It's just exercise. And the other one was you're really good at your job. This is your job and you're good at your job and you're going to go do your job. And the more I made it a job and like you're going to go execute and it's just exercise, like you're just fitness thing and you fitness all day, every day. Like the simpler and the calmer and the dumber I kept it, like the
Mhm.
better. Yeah, I surprised myself on some workouts where I really saw some huge improvements and like mentally saw some huge improvements too. But it was funny. The run was what I was the most excited for because I have been, I mean, obviously, I always have been just working on my running so hard. And I felt better and more comfortable running than I ever have going into this comp. Just felt so much more natural. And then I realized Europeans are really fast.
Ah,
Even compared to like the bottom half of the field might not I feel like in North America, you're gonna have more people that are specialists in lifting than endurance. And then in Europe, we had way more people that just specialized in endurance. I was shocked. And it was really hard because I was like so pleased with myself. I ran a good race for me. My pace was like it was a very hilly, like 5.5K. As opposed to the games, it was long and it was super hilly and I was like almost under a 5 minute kilometer for I was under a 5 minute kilometer for all of the straights. It was just the hills that slowed down. And I was like 27th or 28th. I was like, wow. So it was really tough to try to be proud that it felt better than it ever has. And I held a better pace than I ever had, but it just didn't show on the leaderboard. That was the only moment of the whole weekend where I really felt crushed again, where I was just like, ugh, I just want this to not be an issue anymore. Like I'm
right.
really good at the other things. Anyway, so that was the only moment where I felt really crushed, but I was able to bounce back and then perform really well. It was really good. I was very, very proud of that. I'm trying to remember viscerally how everything felt so I can
Mm.
try to that and make it happen again.
Well,
How,
remember, it's just exercise.
yeah, just
Just
exercise.
So,
fitness, just some squats.
yeah.
How far was this run?
Like it was a 5K. It was like
Oh, was it
depending
a
on
air quotes 5?
Okay.
yeah, but it was long. It was
Oh, it's
between
longer.
somebody said 5.3 and somebody had said 5.6. Mine read 5.4. So mine was basically smack in the middle. So it
Mm.
was like a long 5K with some really brutal hills.
So whoever
Yeah.
measured that, we're gonna take them to the games next year, have
Yeah.
them work with Dave, and they'll balance out
It
like
was
an
a
Yeah.
great
actual
score.
5K.
It was
Is it
honestly a really great course, and I loved the programming. Elliot did such a good job. Lazar and I had like we're like, "Elliot, you wanna program the games? Because we really like these workouts." I
Good
love
help.
the workouts. But it was a really cool course, honestly. It was a great trail 5K. What's crazy though is that it was supposed to have a 30-pound ruck for the women. But ruck couldn't get into Spain in time. They like got stuck at customs. We ended up just having
Wah, wah.
I ran here's the other thing that is mildly annoying. I did so much ruck running because we knew ruck was a sponsor, and I was like, "There's a ruck run." Like, I know there is. So we did a ton of ruck running before it, and I felt so comfortable in a ruck, and I felt like that would be, like, an advantage, and then I didn't even get to wear it. I was like, "Oh,
Well,
I know.
well,
Oh, well." But,
I'll tell you what, one time in like early 2020 before COVID went insane, I went to the Mayhem competition with Steph as her air quotes coach. And I got really good at making shakes and warming up lunch and helping with stretches. So if you need someone at your next comp to be just your person to send around and tell to do things and vent to when runs are hard, I volunteer as tribute
I
because I
love
did
it.
it
Yeah.
one time. Now I'm
Not
pretty
many
good at it. I got you, girl.
That's awesome. I love
I
that.
got your protein shake. I got your lunch. What do
Alright,
you
you
want to
wanna
talk
come to
about?
Australia with me?
I'm
We'll go on a
there.
trip.
Bye, family. I gotta go. I do love your tactics too, though, and I will say that is something that is a like a very specific anxiety reducing tactic
Mhm.
that I learned when I was first postpartum in therapy, where my therapist would have me write down. She called them statements of truth. So, like, the things that work you up or the things that you have anxiety about are typically things that you have no control over, but there's usually something really truthful or logical that you could say to yourself that combats the feeling of anxiety. So, like, for me, I had a lot of trouble sleeping when I had a newborn. And so, like, the statement of truth that I would write down on a little note card and look at is like, sleep is restorative, or like, you will in fact fall asleep. Like that, they were just like really simple. Like you said, like dumb it down for yourself, dumb it down for your brain, and look at it and be like, oh, yes, this is like a statement of this is true.
Mhm.
This is true. And I can deregulate my anxiety by looking at this
Yeah.
true statement. I, of course, at the time felt like a crazy pants and had like an entire Rolodex of these
Oh,
notes. But I do encourage you, anyone listening who is like, oh my God, this one thing like super gives me anxiety every time I think about it, or I can't approach this activity or whatever, like a statement of truth or two on a note card or even just typed into your phone or something to look at when you're feeling that tightness in your chest can oftentimes help just like down regulate those emotions.
yeah, I think so it's funny, I used to have really bad insomnia too. A couple of years
Mhm.
ago, I went through a really terrible bout of insomnia. So I don't wear a Whoop anymore because I was tired of seeing like 3 hours sleep every night. I took it off one night at like 4 in the morning and I never put it back on. I was like, "I can't." But I went through a really tough bout and I almost did not the opposite, but very similar, but I said the opposite thing to myself where I would make it I almost when something like that is like because I mean, the longer you stay awake, the more anxious terrible cycle, right? And so what I honestly my mom so both my parents are psychologists in case this makes anything a little clearer. But so one of the things that has always been really helpful is like taking the power away from the anxiety. So when I would start to be anxious of like, I'm not sleeping and now it's so late, it doesn't even matter if I sleep because that's only like 3 hours. I'm gonna feel terrible in the morning, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
But once I learned that it's like you can function without sleeping. You like if you don't sleep tonight, like so what? You will still function. You
Mhm.
okay. You're not gonna die. You will be fine. It's not imperative. Like, so what you don't sleep tonight, tomorrow you will be extra tired and then you will sleep great. Like the more
Mhm.
I made it not a big deal, and the more I was just like, whatever. If you sleep, you sleep. If you don't, you don't. No, go read a book, go do something else. Tomorrow you will sleep because you'll be super tired. Like the less power the anxiety has, the less it does, right? And then normally I would fall asleep as soon as I realized like, either way, you're gonna be fine. Either way, it's going to be fine. The
Mhm.
easier it got.
I'm
Totally.
calling you at
100%.
6 AM. When my alarm goes off at 6 AM, I'm gonna call you tomorrow and go, "What do you think about sleep now? What do you
Yeah.
think?"
Oh god.
Trust me, because I need it. I'm laughing about the Whoop thing though, because I did the exact same thing. I
Did
found
you?
myself yeah, I found myself one night in bed not moving because I wanted it to think I was sleeping, and I'm like, "I'm a 50-year-old man responsible to no one." Like, I quite literally answered to no one but myself, I'm sitting there trying to fake out a Whoop, and I took that thing off and never put it back on.
Yes.
I'm like, "I'm done with this."
I you know, I tried wearing it when I was first when I had a newborn because I wanted to see how much rest I was or wasn't getting when I was, like, up nursing every 3 hours,
Right.
and it, like, could not understand that I was truly waking up, like, every 2 hours to be awake, and it at the I'll never forget at the end of a particularly shitty night where I was, like, cluster feeding, which is when the baby's hungry every fucking 20 minutes, and you're like, "How is this possible? I just fed you, and then I put you down, and then you got up," and it was like a nightmare. My Whoop was like, "Congratulations, you hit your sleep goal." And I was like,
Yeah.
"What? There's no way, like,
Yeah.
I have been awake there's no it just
Oh,
it like, I think I was so awake all night that it was like, "Oh, you must be sleeping because 'cause
yeah,
I've seen no change in
yeah,
your heart rate or anything, you're just the
that's so
same
funny.
for 9 hours." So it didn't do a good job understanding that, like,
Yeah,
particular cycle in my life, which is what I was most excited to understand. So it
yeah.
it unfortunately did not work for me.
The joy of wearables. The Apple Watch does it to you too. I mean, it does it to me, but it's a nicer thing than the Whoop Band. But the
It's
Whoop
always
Band
my
thing
Apple
made me
Watch has
laugh.
been really accurate about that stuff. I like it for that.
No, it's accurate. I just mean like the whole wearable technology thing. Like I'll mine gives all the same data that Whoop did, and I'll look at it and it'll say, "Oh, you're fully recovered," and I just feel like death.
Yeah,
I'm like,
Right.
exactly.
Congratulations.
and I'm like, of
100.
course not. I'm 53, so maybe that is maybe fully recovered does feel like death.
Mm,
I don't know, but but it's just weird. And then other
yeah.
days when it tells you you should be tired, you feel great. So you just
Yeah,
kind of have to
It's
take it for
bizarre.
what it is.
I like that stuff though. I like the data that comes with it. Even if I don't stick with it like super long term, I find it really interesting. All
yeah.
the data you can gather on your body and interpret in different ways.
I did too. I wore the Whoop for a very long time and I liked it. I mean, I liked it a lot. It was like it helped me feel focused. Like I felt like I knew what my body was doing more. But the insomnia killed it for a bit where I was just like, this isn't worth it anymore. I'm just
Yeah.
getting through life right now. Like I'm just making the best of it and I can't feel like I'm 100% dialed in and it's going to tell me that I'm not and I'm not going to want to see it. So
Right.
that I took it off for a bit. And the other thing that made me take it off for the second time, because then I wore it again for a while, was so for the longest period, I was doing just a ton of aerobic work. That's all I was doing basically, just to build an aerobic base. This was like the summer before the 2020 season, and that made such a huge difference, clearly. But so I was hitting plus 20 strains every single day. Every single day. I think I hit a 20.9 one day, which
Woo.
like my heart rate was like at max for like almost 12 hours of the every hour I was awake. Anyway, so I hit super high strains every day because all I was doing was aerobic work. So obviously, and then when we had to phase out of that to transition back into CrossFit training and had to do some strength stuff and touch on other things, and my strain wasn't as high because I was doing shorter, more intense workouts. The anxiety of I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. I need to do more of this. Like my strain's like a 17. I barely did anything today. That
Mm,
got to me. And that's when I took it off again because I wasn't able to logically understand when it only tells you how hard you're working on one domain. It's really hard to then logically believe that you're still working hard in other domains. I'm like, I would be dead, destroyed from like high intensity, like strength work, gymnastics, whatever. And I would still be like, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. And
mm.
I already have that feeling. That's I think it's one of my greatest strengths, but could also be one of my greatest weaknesses as an athlete is I will do so much. And I always feel like I could do more. I always feel like I could do something better the next day or something more, go harder somewhere. But when you have a wearable confirming that anxiety in its own way, it makes it not so good. So I took it off.
Yeah.
Right.
So I took that guy off.
I know you're truly either one person or the other. You're either the kind of person who sees the data and you're like, "Okay," or it'll be like,
Noah.
you know how the Whoop will sometimes be like, "All right, you're done. Like you've hit your shit
Yeah.
based off of the amount of rest you've had or whatever, and you're done." And some people will just look at it and be like, "Nah, I'm gonna keep going."
Yeah.
Or or you get the data and then you like obsess over it to a
Mhm.
point where it's no longer beneficial for your
Yeah.
overall
Exactly.
mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. I get
Hey,
it.
you you mentioned at the top of the show that you'd moved to Miami, and we've talked about all this crazy fitnessing you're doing. Are you getting any of the nightlife?
I know.
No,
You having
literally
fun?
none.
No.
None? Literally none.
No. No, because we're like outside of the city enough that we don't really get that kind of crazy. How many times have I been to like downtown Miami, like Brickell area? Maybe twice. May Definitely once, maybe twice. That's it. That's the extent of will I like Miami Beach because there's a dog beach there that I love, I'm obsessed with, and I take Zoe to it all the time, and it is stunning. So that's great, and I feel like Miami Beach sounds fancier than Coral Gables. So that's kind of it, but we really don't like Alex and I don't do much. Our friends here, they don't we'll do things, but we don't go out. We haven't really no, surprisingly, that was one of the things people at home were like, "Oh my gosh, you're in Miami? That's crazy." I'm like, "It's really not. I live in there's a school, there's like an elementary school a block down." I'm like, "No, it's not. We're in very much family area."
Yeah.
Miami. Yeah.
But
I love it.
you are having fun with the things that are
Oh,
available to you down there,
it is.
which
I
I just
do.
feel like coming from where you came from and living in Parma sunshine is night and
Yeah.
friggin' day.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
look
huge thing for me is sunshine.
Yeah.
Having winter for 9 months was the worst possible thing for my mental health. Having sunshine every day is I thought maybe eventually it would get old and wouldn't have the same effect, but
Mm-mm.
not really. It
No,
a little bit, but, like, really, it's still so important.
I could live in perma sunshine. I'll never move out of New England. I won't because my family here, my husband's whole family is here. Like, I get it. We're here for life, but I truly think I would thrive in perma
Oh,
sunshine. I would.
that's
I
great.
wouldn't miss it. I would come back to visit the beautiful fall leaves and I
Yeah.
wouldn't miss
Yeah,
the snow. I just
I
wouldn't.
know. Even I went back to PEI for a couple weeks in mid-August, and it had started to cool down, and we
Mhm.
had Alex came with me, he'd never been, and there was one day that it was really nice, and we went to, like, a nicer beach, and the breeze was cool, and I was, like, getting goosebumps if the sun went
Mhm.
away for a second, and I was like, "Oh my god, right, we wait 9 months, 9 to 10 months out of the year for this?"
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, no." I was like, "No, no, no, never. I
Yeah.
can't." I was like, "I can't do it again."
You know your circulation changes if when you live in a warmer climate. This is a fact. I know
Oh,
this because my husband is from basically where you're from, and he
okay.
lived in St. Thomas for a few years after college, and then came home and had to literally lay in like a tanning bed to get warm. Like your
Yeah.
circulation straight up changes when you live in a warmer climate, and then cold to you feels even colder.
And what's so strange is every year in Canada, I tolerated the cold worse. I don't know if just mentally I was more over it, but I could never do the cold. Like people around me, they would have the garage door open in like October. And I'm like, I can't, no, like
Mm-mm.
I can't train in a sweater for doing like 5 workouts. I'm like sweating and then I'm freezing and it's terrible. Like, I never
Yeah,
handled the cold well. And I think every year it got worse. Like it was just my body being like, all right, we have a limited amount of days we can keep you warm and you are using them up. Like,
I
get
think
out.
that's me now. I think that's me being old.
Nikki, I want you to send me a link, some medical proof of the circulation thing, because
I
after you told that whole
swear.
I don't have a reason to doubt you, but I also have to point out that your husband's a ginger and he's naturally cold. That's just the way they
He's
work.
not. No, he's not. He's got, like, straight up, like, Nordic veins. Matt
Does he?
loves the cold. Yeah. I was like, "You lived in the tropics? It doesn't make any sense." But he did. He had cute little red cornrows,
Oh,
and he lived at the beach. I
Oh,
could not
gosh.
make this shit up.
oh,
He
no.
would kill me if he
Oh
heard
my
this, but he
god.
doesn't listen to the show, so it doesn't matter. I say bullshit all the time. But
Yeah.
he no, he's truly like, part of why we'll never move out of New England is because he loves the snow. And he's like a 5-year-old, he, like, wants a snow day. He wants
Oh,
to roll in it and play in it and go tubing and throw snowballs, so
so cute.
and the man does not get fucking cold, and it drives me nuts. I
That's
turn on the
awesome.
pellet stove today. John, is it cold already in Ohio?
It's
Or
60
cool?
degrees. Well, yeah, it's cool. Leaves are starting to fall. 60 degrees
Yeah.
right now.
We've got,
Yeah.
like, 50s in the mornings because it's late September in New England, like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
fall is
nice.
here, and I turned on the pellet stove because I was up early because mama don't sleep no mo, and when he came downstairs, he was like, "What are you trying to smoke us out of here?" And I'm like, "It's 52 degrees out.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Like, the
that's
heat's
cute.
on. The fire's going. What do you want from me?"
Yeah, yeah, no, that sounds it was like 90 today.
Right? I could
Yeah,
do that. I could
yeah, and it
totally do
wasn't even
that.
funny. It's just
Well, one thing's for sure, you'll have an advantage training in the much warmer for obviously for Wadapalooza, and now the games are going to be in Texas. So this is
Oh, yeah?
a little leg up on the rest of the Canadians who I've been sitting around wondering how they're going to handle Texas without just spontaneously combusting.
I don't think it's gonna be outside very much.
Yeah.
I
Hey,
think it's gonna be
you still got to get from the
90%.
car to the arena. Oh, you
God, let's
never
hope.
know.
Alright. I wonder how they'll do a run event because of course they're gonna have running. They like to have running in every second workout, but for a longer run event, my hypothesis is that it'll just be early. They'll just do it in the mornings. But I have a feeling there won't be like a field. Just looking at
Yeah.
the stadium and also the issues they had in Carson. Part of the reason I think they went to Madison in the first place was because it was so hot in California. But I do think most of it will just be inside. It's also so much bigger now. It's way bigger than what the Coliseum was. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling they'll just end up making most of it indoors, which like whatever. The field events look cool. Part of me is a little bummed out that like I had never got to compete in Madison, but I mean whatever. I can't get too attached to little things like that. But I do have a feeling that a lot of it will just be inside.
Well, you're
Yeah, I think so
going to
too.
Fort Worth. You're gonna win it. Remember, I'm putting that pressure on you.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
right.
you'll be the
Perfect.
first Texas
You know what?
champion.
Maybe that's what I need. The first Texas champion. Oh my god.
It'll be
That's
great.
exactly what I think of when I think of Annika. That's
Yes,
All right.
Texan, a very southern woman. Yep, that's
right.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, I really do. It's funny because speaking of, but the South, moving to Florida of all places, coming from a very liberal Canadian household, it
Mm.
just I get so many questions of like, how's Florida with the side I have.
Right.
Like, it is funny the little pocket I'm in doesn't feel like Florida man X. It
Right.
doesn't feel quite so insane. I think if I go any farther north, north, I would I would probably run into some crazies, but I've had a couple instances of, like, oh God, I'm in America and there's guns everywhere. And that has been
Yeah.
weird. But other than that, it's been so much less of a like cultural big English guy adjusting from than I initially thought it was gonna be. Because my dad's from Memphis, Tennessee. Um,
Oh.
yeah. So that's why that's how I got my citizenship was because I technically acquired it at birth. I just had to prove that he lived there until he was like
Yep.
21. And so it's still I had to needed a lawyer and it was still annoying, but way easier than trying to get a visa or a green card or something. Anyways, but yeah, so he grew up in very South Tennessee in the 70s and 80s, which was not a very nice place. Very racist and
Uh,
sexist and
Memphis is still not a very nice place.
See,
Sorry. Sorry.
the city actually got worse, but just even
Yeah.
Tennessee as a state, like, was just brutal then. So he had terrible connotations of the South. He got out of there as soon as
Right.
he could, had really terrible experience with the South. And so I was like, we never thought I was gonna he almost renounced his citizenship after a certain point, but kept it just in case. But I never thought I was gonna live in the United States, let alone the South of the United States. And here we joke about that, like, here I am living in Florida, dad. Anyways, but it is I think it's very different than it was, but that was, like honestly, that was a little bit of, like, a thing at first for me was, like, how different what am I gonna get myself into?
Yeah.
I'm a little blonde girl, I'm pretty safe when it comes to being systemically oppressed, but, it's still not a super safe feeling at first. I was, like, coming from I've been to many places, I've experienced a lot, but living there was so different, but it has been less of an adjustment than I've thought, but probably just because I'm
I
in so
probably
long.
should have set up this entire conversation by telling you I grew up in the South, and I
Really?
grew up about 2 hours from your dad, actually, Tupelo, Mississippi,
Oh, wow.
just south of Memphis. I've been to Memphis dozens of times, and your description is perfect.
I think you did right by landing yourself in a city because every major city in the US, regardless of the state that it's in, is going to have pockets of everyone. And so there's good diversity to kind of like find your community or find the places where you feel most comfortable. So
Yeah.
that is the beauty of the melting
I
pot of
will
the
say
US.
this as someone who's lived in both the North and the South, the North of the United States and then Deep South, a couple of states in the Deep South, actually. I have found them no different
Mm.
from a diversity or friendliness. Like I find great people in every city I've been to, and I find jackasses in every city I've been to, and it just happens. And so I for me, it's always been about, and I'm sure it's the same for both of you guys. Like the people I surround myself with, that's your
Yeah.
little community, and you find
Mhm.
them, and you can wander into some pretty crappy parts. And Florida's known to be the crack house of the US, and that's okay. But there are parts of Florida that are
Yeah.
beautiful and awesome, and parts of Miami, because I've been there a few times, that I
I can
absolutely love.
hear the
You know?
hate mail rolling in,
No,
just
no,
the
no.
Oh, yeah.
Floridians being like,
Hey, my
And
mom's
then
a
I'll
Florida.
go Florida Man and your birthday, and that's like a super fun game. That'll entertain you for a couple
Hey,
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
look, almost every state. Well, I should. No, I'm gonna take that back. That's not true. There are a lot of states that have a lot of crazy stuff going on in it, especially the ones that are heavier populated. Florida, New
Sure.
York, California, Texas. Those are the big
Yeah.
4. You always hear crazy shit out of those states because that's where all the people live.
Yeah.
That's just and
Yeah.
that's where they all live. That's the whole point. You don't hear a lot of crazy stuff out of Mississippi and Kentucky and Iowa. When's the last time you heard craziness out of Iowa? Maybe during football season. That's it.
Yeah.
I tell you
People
Yeah.
are
what,
voting.
when I left news, and I try not to pay attention to
Yeah.
that shit anymore,
I
truly.
really ruined that for me. I used to be very like up to date with things happening and blah blah blah, but COVID did that to me where I hit a point where I just stopped checking because it was just so depressing every time. I was like, I just can't look anymore. When it ends, it'll end. I
Mhm.
just can't check. So even since then, I haven't gotten back in the habit of looking at big news stories. But yeah, no, I mean, there's crazy people everywhere. You can get shitty people in Canada too.
Mhm.
I do think that
What
it's a
what?
very
Come
it
on.
it is an interesting point you make though, like from a mindset, and I'd be curious how your parents are handling if you come from sounds like a liberal Canadian household and now you're living in what is very accurately described a very conservative Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
Like in the most conservative part of the United States, the deep South. Does that worry your parents at all? Being so far away from you distance wise, how are you guys able to keep in touch closely? You texting,
Yeah.
calling? What's that look like?
Oh, I mean, I still talk to them, like, very, very not every day, but, like, very often. Once a week would be enough. I would be giving them enough credit. We FaceTime a lot, and I mean, mom's doing the Masters Fitness Collective this coming weekend.
Oh,
Subtle
that's
plug.
awesome.
Right. Yeah. So she's doing
Oh,
that, and then she's coming to visit. So she's actually coming to visit. We'll probably end up doing Christmas here so we can have my puppy. Like, I see them. I was there in August. Like, I have seen them quite a bit. I'm sure deep down, it definitely scared them, especially my dad. But I think they also realized, I mean, they had met Noah. They had been there because they had for Wadapalooza been to Peak. They've been there before. So it wasn't quite so unknown of like, I was just going off to some random place they'd never been and never seen, didn't know these people. Also, like moving with Alex and having a support system here already was probably very reassuring. But I'm sure deep down it's still concerning. But, I mean, deep down, it's still concerning to me. It's definitely I feel less safe here than I did at home, but that just happens when you're in a big city. I mean, that's not just special to Florida, aside from the gun regulations, but any big city you're gonna feel slightly more any big city you're gonna feel slightly more unsafe in than a small little
Right.
island in Canada. But I do think they always just want what's best for me, and they know that this is what's best for me. So I don't if it does, they don't make it super known at least.
No, it's
yeah.
hard for parents. My daughter's exactly your age. She's living in Cincinnati, going to college. And you're right. It's hard thinking they're away from home. You can't protect them anymore. To your point, it's a big city, so there's the risk is greater in a big city than if you were living at home or in a small city. There's just a lot to worry about as a parent. I'm gonna make Megan and Mira watch this because they don't contact me as much as you're calling.
Yeah, I it's funny because then it goes both ways because I feel like I worry about them sometimes too, where I'm like, I'm not there. I hope dad's doing okay with this. And like, who is mom have at the gym now? So it goes both ways.
I will say my youngest sent me a picture. She crocheted a hat for the cat she had just adopted,
Oh my
and so
god.
I'll
That's
send it to
so
you, Nikki.
awesome.
Yeah, so she's
Please.
all I woke up to this picture of this little tuxedo cat with a tiny little beanie on. The cutest thing you've ever seen.
That's so
That's
cute.
so wholesome.
Yeah,
You
That's
that's
how
guys,
we
so
communicate.
that's why I'm pouring every dime I have into this money pit of a house to make it epic so that my kid never wants to leave.
yeah.
I'm gonna
I
make this house so insanely cool that he's gonna be like, team dinners at my house, come home from college and stay at home, move in and never leave. That's the plan.
Never.
Never
Until
leave.
until he becomes a teenager and then you want him to leave because he will be very annoying and stinky.
No, I will just give him the 3rd floor. I'm like, stink it up there. Just don't ever leave.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
It's fine.
I
It's gonna be
I'm
great.
sh
He's 2.
you got a long way to 20, Nikki.
Oh,
You got a long way to worry about all this.
Yeah.
maybe.
Don't
I can't
worry, I
speak
will. I will worry
Yeah,
every day about it. I got
of
you.
course you will. Well, I can't speak for your parents, Annika. I've never met them, but I'm pretty confident they feel pretty good about you living on your own. You're obviously super capable. You're killing the CrossFit world. Like they got to be just crazy proud. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. They'll be
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. They're pretty cool. I wish I was going to Fort Wayne to watch mom. This is her second year doing it. It'll be her, like, second big competition, but she's coming here after, so I'm sure I'll hear all about it, but I
I'll
was her coach back home when she would do, like, parts of my training, and I would like her coach, so I, like yeah, I'm sad I'm not gonna be hopefully they have a good stream. I know they have, like, a good amount of people and, like,
mhm.
sponsors going and stuff, but
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
what division is she in?
the the age groups are a little different for this. It's not like the same as the games one, but she's 56, so she'd be in the
Okay.
55 to 59 or 50 plus. I actually don't know what the age divisions are for this like specific one. I think they changed it a little bit, like compared to what the games ones are, but 55 plus, I guess.
Yeah, my gym partner, the co-owners in my gym with me own a business called McCoy Medical, and I think they're the medical team for this
Oh,
event.
great.
They're going to
Oh,
be
that's
there,
Maybe
so
she'll
awesome.
meet him. Hopefully she doesn't meet him, but that's
I'll have them look out for her. How about that? That'll
oh,
work. Well, Annika, thank you for joining us. It's been super fun catching up as always. I'm I'm really excited for your year. We didn't really talk about semis. We were heartbroken for you, but I think I even messaged you then. You got a super bright future. And I wasn't being sarcastic when I said I expect you to win the games. Like you're gonna have a hell of a good year. We're
Yeah.
confident of that.
Be
yeah,
great.
for sure. I appreciate it so much.
All right, Nikki, go worry about your son moving out. That's what you should do
Yeah,
tonight. No sleep
that's
for
what
you.
don't worry. That's why I lay awake in bed at night, so I can fulfill that, no problem.
Yeah, you'll get there. All right. Well, it's great seeing you guys. And for everyone listening, we appreciate you guys joining us, and we will chat with you soon.